So we have different protons that the light comes in. And so if we absorb UVB light, the proteins will grab it. And then afterwards, they'll start fluorescing and re-releasing that light as UVA inside of our body.
Welcome to the QBC podcast, where we explore exciting new paradigms that have a meaningful impact on our day-to-day lives. I'm your host, Meredith Oke. Let's keep the conversation going. Join us in our free community by visiting qbcpod.com. That's qbcpod.com. And let's see where the quantum superhighway takes us next. Yeah, it is a wild time to be alive. I don't know what's going on with all of you, what you're noticing, what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what you're observing, what you're downloading, what you're allowing in. But there's a lot. And what I find so interesting is that for me, even though there's always, challenges to whatever life and all the things in it, but I just feel so excited, energized by the world right now. And then I meet people who feel exactly the opposite. And I'm like, how are we living? How are we living in the same, we live in the same place, generally speaking? Why are we in such different places? I don't know. I think part of it is that I get to have these wild conversations doing this podcast. And today's is no exception. Nico Kennedy, the director of research at the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology and the author of the Brighter Days, Darker Nights Substack, which is a bestseller in the women's health category, I believe. Go check it out if you don't subscribe to Nico's Substack. It's great resource. We talk about all the things today. We talk about the difference between circadian biology and quantum biology and where that's going and how the field is changing and growing and evolving so quickly. The scientific field of quantum biology is literally exploding. I get a new email every week from someone like, have you seen this one? And there's some new lab that started up. A lot of them are independent, not even within universities, which is super interesting because there's a decentralized quantum biology research landscape evolving that is just so cool to see. So where do we fit into that? Where we fit into that is that we have a very small niche within that field, a small grassroots niche where we use the science to and think about how it applies in daily life and how it explains and contributes to us all being healthier and feeling better and having enough energy to do all the things we want to do, to evolving our consciousness, all of those things. So that's where we fit in. We're not we're not in a lab doing research. We're on the ground working with practitioners, seeing what happens when that research is applied to real humans. And an exciting piece of this is that we are at the IAQB developing a new program that I'm excited to tell you about that is designed to empower practitioners of any kind with any size practice to track their patient outcomes and their patient data in ways that it can be published and that it can be used to contribute to the wider research field, so that we have research coming up from the ground, from out in the field, from all of you working with people, whether you're a patient or a practitioner or a client. The research is being sourced from the real world and not just coming down through controlled studies and labs, which has its place and is important, but we want to contribute the other way. So I think this is really exciting because I don't know about you, but I always thought you had to have hundreds of patients or hundreds of clients and a huge data set in order to create anything that could be published or that could contribute to a published study. And turns out that's not the case. There is a framework called a practitioner-based research network, where practitioners are taught and empowered how to be able to contribute and get published and have their client outcomes and their data counted as real research. So we don't have to just rely on anecdotes. And Nico and I, if you listen all the way to the end of our long, interesting conversation, we do explain that a little bit. And so please look out for announcements. If you're not on our email list, please get on our email list at qbcpod.com. We'll be announcing we'll do an information session coming up soon, and we'll be announcing that. And so come and jump on and learn how, even if you have only a handful of clients or a small practice, how you can participate in this new research movement. It's going to be really, really fun. I'm super excited about it. All right. Before we dive in, don't forget to visit my friends at bondcharge.com. Put QBC in the discount box at checkout for a little surprise discount. And of course, if you haven't yet tried the nanocrystal patches that use your body's own light to regenerate, I definitely recommend checking those out. There is a link in the show notes, or go to QBC Pod products/patches, and you will find what I'm talking about. This is a futurist. This is like I don't know. I think of it as a multidimensional healing modality that I've been using for over a year, and have been really impressed with it. As you know, I don't promote a lot of stuff. I really don't. So when I do, I really mean it. Okay, enjoy the episode. Nico Kennedy, welcome back to the QVC podcast.
Thank you, Meredith. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, always good to have you, because you just are so good getting into the research, which is why you are the director of research at the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology.
Thank you. Yes, there's so much fascinating stuff coming out.
I know. Every time I see what you're working on, I'm like, what? Where did she find that? Who knew? Okay, so we're going to talk about some of it today, and it's going to be super fun. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's start with one of my favorite topics and a very long, thorough thread of this entire podcast: circadian rhythms.
Right.
So anyone who listens to this is committed to the circadian regulation habit. But you were posting and writing about some things on your Substack recently that were talking about like the deep, deep subtleties of the signaling that's going on. And I thought that would be fun to explore, because we all feel, we feel the difference when we look at a screen and then try to sleep, or we don't go outside during the day. It just makes intuitive sense. But I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit on like the absolute profound, subtle responses that our bodies are having to light signals, deep, 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 deep down.
Right. So like all the way into like epigenetic level.
I don't know, man. You why don't you walk us through? Yeah. Why don't you start a little higher and walk us down into it?
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So as you mentioned, we all can feel it. And that's one of the cool things about using circadian health as a modality, is that people who start getting into it tend to adhere to the protocols really well, because it's really apparent and really fast how much better you feel when you do it. So that can happen in like 2 days, right? And there was some fascinating camping research that happened in Colorado. They're like, hey, what happens on a weekend camping trip with no artificial light? Oh, wow, look at everyone's circadian rhythm stabilizing, and everyone starts having like an earlier, more healthy chronotype. That's immediate within just one weekend of change. So what I started digging into were 2 different branches. One was that, why are there people having outsized effects that are way beyond what we can explain with circadian biology alone? And that was how I ended up going into quantum scale. The other is that, why does it sometimes take a lot longer for certain people to experience the full benefits of it? And then what are the long-term impacts of circadian rhythms? And so that was where I ended up in methylation research, and finding out that for certain people, it could take like 2 annual cycles, because when genes get all mucked up at the epigenetic level, they need methylation and we need demethylation. And that happens on a seasonal cycle.
Interesting. Okay. So just to clarify, so some people, or most people, I would say, have their circadian rhythms regulated pretty quickly if they adhere to natural light and dark cycles.
Yes.
Then you're saying there's some outliers that take a lot longer, and that is a genetic variable.
Yep.
Or an epigenetic variable.
Epigenetic.
Okay.
So we have
Well,
genetics.
let's not get too deep in. Okay. And then the third bucket is people who have like outsized effects. And
Yes.
are you talking about in terms of recovering from symptoms, or just in what are we talking about with? So like they regulate their circadian rhythms and you get way more stuff happening than you would expect. Like what kind of stuff?
Yeah. Things like no more sleep paralysis, waking nightmares, right? And that's like, yeah, that makes sense. Circadian health. Then there's people who are like, everything in my life is different. I am suddenly so much happier. I have energy. I'm completely transforming my life. I am quitting my job and going into a completely new direction. These kinds of things that are indirectly related to a person's energy level. And then also indirect, like they're like, oh, I want to improve my fertility. I'm having trouble conceiving, for example. But then they start doing light and health and things, and they end up having other things like their immune system. Oh, I thought I was autoimmune and now I'm not having those flare-ups anymore. Right. So they will go into it for one direction, but then they will have something that's completely like unrelated or not the target symptom that they were doing this for that resolves. And they will think, I had that since childhood. I never thought that was something that would go away.
So you have outliers where it takes a long time for anything to happen. And then you have outliers where it's like that the circadian regulation was like a switch that needed to be flipped.
Yeah.
And once it's flipped, it's like there are just cascading benefits
Yes.
throughout their health, across the health spectrum.
Yeah, you've got it.
Okay. All right. So what's going on?
Yeah. So it's really amazing looking at different things and at different scales, because we could always just look at it like these are the experiences and that's that. And some people who are working in this modality, like we're working at the Institute with practitioners of way different scope of practice. So some of our people are surgeons, for example. So they are seeing someone for a very particular condition for a very particular time-bound response and doing a highly invasive medical procedure. And then they're using circadian health to understand recovery patterns or timing of those surgeries or medications like leading up to it, right? All kinds of different things related to this acute situation. All the way down to we have people who are energy workers or body workers, like they're doing massage that's like very, very light touch, but they're still informing their patients about these things. So we have like broad level of application. And what's really interesting about these different responses people have to the circadian rhythm stuff is that it can be very effective at all different kinds of levels. And it's not always predictable at this point. And that's part of where it would be really interesting to have some more research done on individual variation to understand like who's likely to respond better to what treatments. You know, do we need to work more on evening light protocols? Usually I recommend that before starting with the morning protocols, right? It's easier to tune the night environment than to like get the discipline to wake up in the morning. Within all of this spread of variability, there become a lot of really interesting questions in terms of like, would it be possible to find out if someone doesn't respond immediately, how much longer would it likely take for them? Like in terms of those longer term methylation patterns, a lot of that epigenetic layer has to do with like trauma, early life trauma, right? Emotional patterns can change the way that the body's sense of safety is happening. And then based on that sense of safety, then their epigenetic profile is going to be more or less malleable to change. So yeah, there's a whole like buckets and buckets and buckets of questions that we can, as we're talking with practitioners, as I'm interviewing them and saying like, where are you finding success? Where are you still struggling? Because some of our people are dealing with patients and not everyone that's a practitioner with us is advertising that they are savvy with quantum biology, right? A lot of them are just still doing their regular thing. They're like, I'm a functional medicine doctor. And then they get people. And then I was talking with one woman and she has a patient. She says, I don't even know how this person found me. They haven't been outside in 17 years and they're terrified of the sun.
Wow.
And they're having all kinds of like these like, neurotic kinds of behaviors. And so how does she's like, I don't even know where to go because I mentioned going in the sun and they're, just shaking in their boots over that. They basically spend their entire lives indoors. So
this is wow. Listen, I just want to say to everybody, if you're feeling a little guilty because like you're sleeping through sunrise with the time change or whatever, you know what? You're doing okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There are people who literally never go outside.
Like, yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Early morning light's good for a while. It's good to remember the spectrum of people and where they're at. Let's start with sunlight. So what is happening? You mentioned that circadian biology offers a lot of explanation, but it does hit a wall at a certain point in terms of mechanisms and explaining these more like full spectrum effects.
Right.
So if we drop down, so like just give us a quick biochemical circadian biology and then drop us down into the quantum, what's happening at the quantum level when we're in when we're put our bodies in sunlight.
Yeah. The idea with circadian biology is we get light, it comes in through our eyes, a little bit through our skin, tells our brain what time of day it is, and then our brain sends top-down cascade of instructions to the rest of the body. That's light and circadian rhythms. Then with darkness, we're in darkness for a certain amount of time. It takes a long time some people say 3 hours for all of that light-based stuff to shut down. And once we're in darkness for that long, then the body says, oh, okay, we're going to start nighttime processes, cellular repair. That doesn't explain things like photobiomodulation, which is what happens with infrared light, for example. So this lower frequency of light that comes in, it penetrates all the way through our body, all the way through our bone, into our brain, right? This infrared light comes in, and mitochondria are particularly sensitive to it, and it changes the way mitochondria are firing, and it tells them to activate and do more of all of the good things that mitochondria do for us. There's a lot of different explanations about how photobiomodulation is working. And there are a certain group of people who are saying we have to understand this at the quantum level because mitochondria are fundamentally operating through the movement of electrons, which are subatomic particles, and they behave in quantum ways. And we actually have known this theoretically for a long time. Physics is highly mathematical. So I'm not going to get into the math, but I just want to give this concept here.
Yeah.
We're like math calculations, right? And saying we're trying to predict what we see happening in real life. We see these things happening in real life. So classical physics have a certain set of like ways that they approach math. Quantum physics has this other way that they are approaching the math. And so lately the battle has kind of been when we're looking at things like mitochondrial function, does the classical math explain it better or does the quantum math explain it better? And oftentimes we're now finding that the quantum math is explaining it better than the classical math, right?
Okay.
So we've now have imaging that can show electron tunneling inside of mitochondria in real time, non-invasive, like without killing the cell, which is just totally amazing and game-changing technology for understanding quantum health.
Yeah,
that we can actually see it.
Electron tunneling has always been theoretical on any level, even like the non-biological theory of it.
Yes.
And now we can see it.
Which helps to explain things like there was a paper that came out earlier this year where they were testing, there's various like metrics of trying to understand how well mitochondria are functioning. And they found when grounded, right, like standing on the earth or electrically grounded, people on this podcast should know what that is, mitochondria are operating more efficiently. That's really cool. Mitochondria are more efficient.
Okay, so when we ground, when we're outside and we are touching a tree or we have bare feet, our mitochondria are operating at a higher level. They're working better.
Yeah.
And so the explanation for that can be found in this electron tunneling process.
Yes. Yeah. They're little quantum engines.
I am following. Okay.
Lovely. Yeah. So proton tunneling is also theoretically true. We haven't exactly fully observed that, but we are like working on that, right? So when you're working, there's like the math theoretical level, and then we're starting to have technologies to be able to show it since quantum effects were discovered in the vacuum, people still have the idea that that's where they exist just because that was the first place that they were observed.
Right.
So
and this is an important point. So for people, because sometimes people come in and they're like, oh, quantum effects in living systems, of course. Like I heard it on this podcast. And then they go talk to a mainstream physicist. And that person is like, that's crazy. What kind of pseudoscience have you been sucked into on the internet? And it's because in classical physics, this electron tunneling process, these quantum processes, it was agreed that they didn't happen in living systems. So the whole idea that they do, just for people to understand, if your brother-in-law like teaches physics, thinks you're being a nut job, just so you understand, this is a totally new idea.
But it was suppressed. So
of course it was.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to go back, we could look at where like Einstein era physics, because quantum biology and quantum physics, all of that stuff was coming around the same time as he was doing his work. And he worked in the Swiss patent office at the time. So he was dealing with emerging technology.
Einstein was.
That's what he was seeing.
You know what? I had never considered that as a really good insight. It was a patent office. He was seeing all the coolest stuff in the world.
Exactly. So he was seeing the wave, and he put together the physics that was suited not to describing reality, but to describing and being useful for the coming wave of technology. So that brings us to why quantum biology now, because it was theorized back then. Einstein was like, oh, and quantum entanglement, that's spooky action at distance. No, superposition, God doesn't play dice with the universe. Tunneling happening faster than the speed of light? No, nothing's faster than the speed of light, right? Like everything that quantum biology, like he rejected. And so there was a lot of pushback.
Right. So he was rejecting quantum physics. And at the time, was quantum physics linking to biology, or did that?
There were people who were starting to make those connections. Yeah.
Okay. So this would have been like about 100 years ago, 110 years ago. Okay.
Anything involving charge transfer, like movement of protons and electrons, redox biology, all of that stuff is happening at the quantum scale. And life would not exist without it. So there's never really been a question about it. It's just, how is it useful? So that bring us back now, if you're tracking with what kind of patents are happening right now, right? So I've seen one, interesting, glasses to put on women to change the timing of their contractions by shining different frequencies of light in their eyes. Solar panels that are using melanin from cuttlefish, because biological melanin can handle and continue converting solar energy at way higher temperatures than existing solar panel technology. What's another one? Piezoelectricity. They're like, piezoelectricity, too small to matter. One of our students in one of the recent cohorts, we started talking about piezoelectricity. He's like, I don't believe in that. And I'm like, well, we'll see. But they have patents to use piezoelectricity to power the chips that they want to be able to put in people and have it run off of the body's piezoelectricity.
Okay. Can you give like a quick explanation for our people of piezoelectricity?
Sure. It's just like when your body is moving, that motion, the friction and everything is generating energy that the body can recapture and use again.
These are all patents.
And so these are all patents.
That's really cool.
So if you're watching the current patent office, you're like, the coming wave of technology is dependent on understanding quantum. And particularly quantum biology.
Yeah, and I had no plans to mention, but like this patch I'm wearing has a patent that is reflecting back biophotonic, or maybe piezoelectric. I don't know. Not too focused on that. Back into the body to create frequencies to have biological effects.
Yeah, exactly. So the coming wave of technology, like the next era, is quantum. And so that's why now quantum biology research is suddenly funded.
Okay. I was wondering, because as you and I have discussed, and I'll be sharing this in some upcoming communications, independent quantum biology labs are exploding. Like there are so many, which is amazing. It's really exciting. But I was kind of like, okay. Now I understand. They need to expand the technology, the understanding of the science to create the technology, and the patents are starting to show up.
Yes.
And these patents rely on a mechanistic explanation, which would require quantum biology.
Exactly. You got it, Meredith. So Yeah, it's exciting and neat, and we're finding out all kinds of cool things. The future direction for this technology boom is what they've been doing is they've been trying to start from the ground up and build quantum systems, and it's getting quite frustrating for them to build. And then as soon as they get it any amount of interaction with the living world, the real like environmental impacts, then decoherence, right? They have quantum superposition is one of the things that they really need to work for quantum computing. As soon as you get it outside of their very tightly controlled systems, those quantum effects collapse because they're technological and we don't have the technology yet. So the new future direction is to look at biology because in biological systems like photosynthesis, for example, the way that the cell is made is creating an environment that protects those quantum effects, even as they're interacting with like wide variations in temperature, electromagnetic frequencies, all of the different things that are happening in living cells. So that's part of the push and pull that's happening is that we're starting to want and to need technology to be built based on frameworks from nature. So we're seeing what's working with nature at the quantum scale and then trying to reverse engineer that to be able to create computers that can move faster and not be so sensitive to like thermal changes and things like that.
Wow. So biology is really the original technology.
Yeah, that's kind of the movement that's happening right now.
Huh. This could go in a lot of directions.
I know
this whole movement. I mean, this podcast could as well, but
yes,
but this whole movement, right? Like,
yeah,
like some of these things we're learning to harness our body's own energy and develop healing capacities, and some of them we're learning to harness light to have certain different reactions. But some of them sounds like we're trying to technologize our bodies or our biologies. Anyway, yeah, it's obviously a very rich, deep discussion that many people have covered, the transhumanism and such. But
yes, yep, exactly.
Right.
So what we're doing is actually somewhat unique in the field because we are looking to use this biology to better understand how we can optimize human health, have a better experience of life.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason. There's no other end game there. Just, yes, to know, because I really believe, yeah, that we're only just touching the surface of what our biology is capable of if we can put it in the conditions it requires to thrive. Like, how far could we go? How high could our consciousness evolve? Like, how much more physical capacity could we have to do things and energetic capacity? Like, who knows, really? We don't even know.
One of those changes I was talking about earlier in terms of the outsized effects that happen with circadian biology, when you optimize circadian biology, it optimizes mitochondrial repair. So your mitochondria can last longer and be more efficient, and you can build up your mitochondrial density. So that's one of the tests they do to see like how well someone's energetics are functioning. You can test the mitochondrial density, the density of the mitochondrial DNA.
Okay.
There was a really interesting study done where they looked at two different, very large genetic data sets, and they were trying to understand the link between personality and early mortality, because there's all this data showing that for some reason, people who have higher traits of neuroticism and like negative affect, higher rates of depression, that those people actually are more likely to have an early untimely death.
Oh, interesting. So there's a link between your personality and your, we'll call it mental health
and longevity.
And longevity.
Yes.
And it's not a happy one.
No.
Okay.
No.
You are potentially reducing your lifespan if you have like a highly neurotic or highly depressive personality.
Right.
So says the research. Okay. And they're like, why is that? What's the mechanism?
So they came down to mitochondrial density also predicted this relationship. So people who had lower mitochondrial DNA count had higher neuroticism, higher depressive symptoms, and was also linked to that early mortality.
Really? So, so people with lower mitochondrial density, are we talking amount of mitochondria and their ability to function, or both, or one or the other?
So it's empty DNA count. So it's a little bit messy, I think.
Okay. So we'll just say all of it.
They slice it all up and then count it. A lot of genetic research it's very much still in its infancy, very much still in the slice and dice. Like, what can we understand by understanding parts? So take this with a grain of salt. But when they do that, you can see like one person, you could take a biological sample and do that slice and dice of their mitochondrial DNA and see, and if like one person would have a higher number and another person would have a lower number based on the same amount of biological sample.
Okay. So it's like, it's a less robust result in people with neurotic traits or depressive traits.
Right. That they would have a lower number.
Have a lower mitochondrial density. All right. Got it.
Yes. Which would be suggesting that they have a lower capacity to generate energy in their body. Because mitochondria, right, you hear the powerhouse of the cell. And we could go on and on. And we had many great guests in the past talking about mitochondria and how vital they are to health and all the different things that they do. So they think of it as like saying this person has lower ability to generate energy. So if you have lower ability to generate energy, there seems to be a link that you have a lower ability to be a pleasant person and to feel optimistic about the world.
Yes.
And then in time that you may have a shorter lifespan, like again, that all of these things based on you don't have the energy that you need to be able to build your life in a good and happy way. So that kind of links and starts to explain some of the mechanism, starting to sleep better. And then you have better mitochondrial repair. And then you start to feel better. And then suddenly you're like, there is no way I can stay in this job that is sapping my soul and I feel horrible about. And I need to go and do this thing. And I have the energy to do it because
now I
my
have the energy
have
to make that decision. Yeah. That makes so much sense. And for anyone just joining the party, like mitochondrial function has been shown to sort of be underlying to all chronic illness, or a lack of mitochondrial function is causative of every symptom and condition and disease that we do not want to have. And high mitochondrial function is indicative of robust health and high energy, just for anyone who's tuning in for the first time. So, okay. Wow. All right. But now we're like connecting that to personality. So it's like almost like there's not enough energy. It's probably a bit of a cycle. If there's not enough energy to make good decisions, you end up in situations that cause you to feel neurotic and depressed, which lowers your mitochondrial function, which lowers your capacity to create energy, which lowers your ability to make a different decision, because making a change requires energy.
Yes.
All right. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's crazy. So, okay.
Darker nights, brighter mornings, stable meal times, all of these things are like influencing not only what we think of as health and wellness, but also it's influencing mental health and even personality.
That is like, it's really crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just like thinking about it in my own life. The longer I do this and the more I do this, like my propensity to remain in a bad mood for more than a few minutes, like very rare. I don't even get in bad moods that often, which I will tell you is not always the case. You could ask the people who live with me.
Yeah. So it's profound. And when I have like a new client coming in, the cool thing about it lately is that I've produced so much material and educational material. There's like a barrier that keeps bad people here. But like some people are just really difficult to work with. And I was just like generally not talking about all of these things. Like I would have those clients come who really like didn't feel like an energetic match. And now for all of the practitioners who are thinking like, this is way too crazy. Like I'm a doula, like I'm helping women through this really intense experience. And so if these women are coming in with this robust mitochondrial health where they're resilient and have like a good positive attitude, I can tell you like it makes a world of difference for this acute situation that I'm walking through with them. And before I had this in my toolkit, it's, the most likely time that a woman is going to get a negative mental health diagnosis is like after her baby is born, because all the circadian disruption like directly undermines mitochondrial health. And it's very highly, correlated with depression and postpartum psychosis on the more extreme ends of it. So this information is really profound. We were talking about the technology earlier, which is like kind of to us in the applied quantum biology world, we're like, this can improve people's lives right now. Like women could be not, like way lower rates of postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, and like way more everything happening physiologically the way that it's meant to in this time, just based on the kind of light that a mom's getting. That is really, really profound. And so if it's happening at this quantum scale, it seems really confusing, but there's also the level of it that can just be explained by everyday experience. I think that's really important to remain grounded in, that all of this is really like the theory. We're using theory to try to understand what we see happening in the real world. It's not that we have to use theory to go into a new place or expand. Everyone always wants to like expand the frontiers, and like this can be used to expand frontiers, but it also can just be to like get back to those really basics.
Right. So we can use quantum biology to create patents on all kinds of crazy new technology, but we can also use it to explain why ancestral habits are more life-affirming than being cut off from nature and living a modern indoor tech-based lifestyle. So quantum biology is bringing us forward into new technology, explaining where we came from and how it's important to honor what our biology actually needs in nature without any kind of technologic intervention. And also explains how so many modalities that have often been dismissed have an effect. I mean, if we're talking about mental health, I follow a very, very good psychoanalyst on X, and he's very old school and thorough and is not on board with all of the modern the train that the modern psychology has jumped on. I respect him a lot, but he had this post one day that was like, who are these like scammer, unless you're talking about these scammers who claim to be able to take things out of your subconscious programming or whatever that means, energy healing scammers, whatever that means. And I was like, oh, come on. So it's always interesting to remember, like, somebody can be very competent and have a high level of excellence in their field, but if there's something they don't understand, they tend to dismiss it. My point being, quantum biology can give credibility to what this person was calling the energy scammers.
Right.
As well. Like, that's also another area of application. Could you say how you see that working for a second? Like let's like talk about energy work, homeopathy, sound healing, releasing trauma from the body, or changing subconscious programming. Where's the connection of that with quantum biology?
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at energy, I'm going to go cosmic with this one.
Love. Let's go.
Okay. Let's go a little bit cosmic. So the Earth itself is kind of like an inverse atom. We see like an atom has the nucleus is full of protons and neutrons. Atomic force is what's holding those positively charged protons together, because normally positive charges would like repulse each other, right? But in the nucleus, we have all these positive charges together. That's really fascinating. And that's nuclear force. Then we have a cloud of electrons around it. Electrons, we can understand them to, in the quantum sense, they say like we, at this point, don't have models that can predict where the electron's going to be. And so that's where we talk about like superposition of like saying like, maybe it's in two places at the same time. Like that doesn't make sense. Maybe, right? Like we have all these different ways that we're trying to understand why we can't accurately predict where the electrons are going to be. So we have like a cloud where we say like, well, we think it's going to be in this particular zone. So that is an atom. And when we're looking at chemical bonds, we're seeing interactions where the nucleus of one atom is attracting the electrons of another. And so then they're sharing electrons to different nucleus, right? It's sharing, collaboration, right? Saying we're going to share this energy. There's energy between us. And that's what forms all of these different molecules, right? When looking at where an electron could be, and then we have like spin of electrons. And so all these different quantum parameters trying to understand electrons, which we still don't have a model that can actually do it, but we're trying. If an electron could potentially be in like 1,000 different states per electron, and we have like bajillions of electrons, right? There's a lot of different encoded in those electrons by their state, by their quantum state. And we find those like spin dynamics of electrons are encoded in genetics, for example, that you have an electron and in classical sense, you say like that this electron is just as good as any other electron, but the DNA is saying, no, I reject that electron. I only accept electrons that have this particular spin state, right? So we know that there's these quantum dynamics at play where our DNA is saying yes to this one, no to this one, yes to this one, no to this one, like bajillions of times every single second. I told you we're going to get cosmic, right?
Okay. I'm here
So
for that. I'm here for it.
We're made of these energetic reactions. So when we like clapping our hands together, this is like actually like an electrical repulsive charge hitting. It's not actually like the matter, like the protons in my hand aren't touching right now. It's the electrons touching. And we're constantly on our planet being bombarded by cosmic radiation, right? Coming from all kinds of places. What kind of information is being carried on the protons that are coming from storms happening outside of our solar system? And that light is coming this way. And we know that these subatomic particles are coming through and that we have quantum apparatus to be able to highly differentiate thing that in classical physics, oh, it's just an electron. But in quantum physics, it's like, oh, it's an electron with potentially, like, we don't even know how many different, like 1,000 different parameters on this single electron, right? When looking at like things like the methylation profiles of genes that are determining things, like we can see like the methylation profiles. This is what's causing like different types of diabetes. For example, you can see the methylation profile and the genes are deciding how does that
Methylation
happen.
being the cell's ability to like get rid of stuff it doesn't need or transmute
Methylation
it.
being a methyl is going to change the way a gene expresses itself. So you have like, you know, from your parents, you have like a gene of this type and a gene of this type. And then the methylation is going to decide which one's active and which one's not. And so the circadian rhythm is changing this in real time. And that's why I'm talking about light, that we know that the circadian rhythm, like at this level, is going to be like a hard crank, right? So the light comes in and then it gives the signal. And then the genes are all like, start making these proteins now. And then the light goes away. And then it's slowly like, and now we're going to do these ones, right? So our genes are like changing shape in real time. You know that I like to go into the way details. So it's like, how do we ground this in the real? Like, how is this like relating to energy work, right? That there are all of these subtle forces that are encoded into these like electrons, and electron transfer is what's determining if we have the energy or not. So when looking at something like a massage, for example, on the one hand, you're just moving the body around, right? Like mushing muscles and fascia and whatever. But on another level, the electrons are flowing between each of these people, right? So, and then there's the piezoelectricity where we know that the body is recapturing that energy, right? So this one person's hands are going on the other, and they notice from body work that there is electron transfer. And that's part of why it's so important for body workers to not burn out. If they're going outside and spending that time where they are grounded to the earth and their mitochondria are transferring well, and then I told you this is going to get cosmic, right? That we go outside, and like I'm standing out here and like there's this sunlight hitting me and I feel that sunlight is containing particular information that it's ringing our ionosphere at all times. And it's also like the information from the stars and all of that. We know that we're being flooded by subatomic particles that just because we can't measure them, like people have talked about astrology, right? The timing of the stars at the moment of your birth, like say anything. And like at the level of our DNA, it's likely that it is actually pulling in particular information there. We just don't quite know how to parse what the information is, but we know, again, that we have these outside effects. So there's one thing where you like could get a massage. You could go to one person and get a massage. Another person could give you that exact same technical massage, right? The exact same movements and strokes, but you would have a completely different experience of that massage based on the difference in the quality of the electron transfer between you and your massage therapist. So right now we can't really quantify why one person can give you a massage and you feel just like absolutely amazing and transformed, and the other person can give you a massage and you're like, oh, that was nice. Like we can't really quantify that. And so we think of like, oh, well, I didn't like them, or there was like this smell in the room, right? And smell is another thing that is totally quantum, like the sense of smell. We can tell if there's like deuterium rich stuff. Like we can tell if there's extra neutrons. Like it doesn't affect the way the cells are binding, but when we smell it, we can tell the difference. And so we know that smell is quantum, and we know that smell is very entangled in the memory. Like how does that work, right? And so if you think about that at the quantum level, there is a lot of information that our body is perfectly attuned to, but it's happening at the subconscious level. So we can't explain it, but we know that more is happening than meets the eye. So this is where the quantum work is really interesting, because we could potentially be understanding, because once we can understand it, then we can control and be more deliberate about it. But in a lot of times, it's just doing the things that we already know, that if we have like a good emotional relationship with our massage therapist, then she's going to be giving us a better massage than if we go to like some person at the mall that gives us weird vibes, but we just do it anyways. That's not going to have the same effect. And like this, right? There's so much mystery, but it always points to things that we already know. So we can just get to be more deliberate and specific, like rather than being like, oh, I always feel so good when I'm on vacation and I don't have to wake up in the morning at a particular time and I can do long walks on the beach. Like, that's just ideal. I wish I could live every day like that, but I have to go and work. And then instead it's like, well, no, actually that does do something for you if you spend a bit of time outside every morning, that is like a deliberate lever you can pull on your health and on your whole mental outlook. So yeah, energy healing. That's a good one. I probably went way spiraling out there.
No, I love it.
But
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the point is that even if we don't have the exact mechanism, there is more than enough evidence to point to the idea that, of course, energy work is valid and has therapeutic effects. Of course, sound healing does. Of course, all of these little modalities, I love meeting people because they're like, oh, I practice the blah, blah, blah technique. And I'm like, oh, what's that? And they're like, well, you tap here and then you do this, you do that. And like, there's so many, there's so many ways.
Aromatherapy,
and it
right?
works. Yeah.
Someone was just telling me their amazing aromatherapy story recently about how they were working with this aromatherapist, and like they did this, that, the other test, blah, blah, blah. And like, oh, because of your type, you need this particular smell, which was bergamot. And then she's like, as she's like doing this aromatherapy, and then she's realizing like, oh, the best times with my grandma were when we would drink Earl Grey tea together. And my grandma used to do all of these same things as I'm doing that's making me have a negative time, that this bergamot's supposed to heal for me. And like my grandma had already figured out that Earl Grey was medicine that would help her manage these particular kinds of stress patterns that she had. So she was like, it was so cool that this person was able to like wave wands and do this test or whatever, and then like come around to like this really basic thing, like, oh, I'm gonna be like my grandma and like take time to drink some Earl Grey now and then.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it makes such sense. Like if you are able to read the energy or communicate with the energy of a person's, I was going to say body, but I don't know, sphere, aura, energetic blueprint. Because I mean, if we're just going to go all the way, right? If we're all made of atoms and the atom is mostly space. I mean, of course, we need to work with energy. Like, of course we do. And that, and on that level, like we're not even really separate from each other or from nature, because we're all part of the same ecosystem of wavelengths or whatever we want to call it. I don't even know what word to use. Like people are like, no, there's no particles, there's no this, it's all. I'm like, okay.
Well, maybe not. Holographic universe, like we can go there. And like with electrons, they respond to photonic energy, right? So like we're absorbing light, but then our electrons will absorb that, and then they can, like, our electrical energy can also be emitted as light. And so in terms of some of that more woo stuff where people are looking at like biophoton release and seeing that different emotional states are like the body's releasing this photon energy in different places in the body. And so you can see like different emotional centers across the body is really interesting. And when we get back to that study I told you, the 2019, the first time that they were able to image electron tunneling in living cells, and they show like images that they captured from the living cell, and it's like the energy is quite contained, but in the cell that they were imaging that's like nearing death, you can see it's much more lit up, like it's leaking more energy as the mitochondrial, it's not as efficient. The body is losing energy as it's going. So we think of low energy. In some cases, there's not enough input, but in other cases, it's inefficient, and so it's leaking on the output, right?
Right. And I'd heard that as a description of aging, and particularly like advanced aging, like where people seem to be aging faster than is really natural or necessary.
Yeah.
And part of what's going on is that their cells are leaking out. All the light is leaking out.
Exactly. Yeah. So Carrie Bennett talks about this in terms of like the size of the mitochondrial, because we're dealing with this at the energy, like at the level of this very small thing. So very, very small changes in the size of the electron transport chain where this is happening can make huge effects in terms of the quantum scale, because it's so small, right? And it's happening really, really, really fast. I think that's what people don't like quite realize, is like how incredibly fast and how many millions of interactions are happening at a time. So when you go in the cold, for example, and you feel like your body like kind of shrinking, right? Like your cells actually are compressing, like your mitochondria are getting a little bit closer together. And so your mitochondria also can act more efficiently under cold conditions. And that's part of how cold like helps condition the mitochondria. And then it also gives like genetic information where there's like, oh, I need to be more conservative. And a lot of people are living in this endless summer type of lifestyle. And so we talked about that in terms of the methylation patterns that a lot of people, if they've been living in like endless summer.
Meaning like you never temperature regulate, you just keep your house really warm.
Yep.
Even when and you never really go outside in the cold. So your body never gets to experience the actual
16
season.
hours of artificial light, 72 degrees, static, thermal environment. Yeah, your body's never had that super long darkness. It's never had that temperature scale. And this is one of the things that happens with women in my world, where, especially now, so I've been a doula for a long time, over 10 years, close to 15 years now, actually, I think. I don't know, a long time. And when I first started, like, it was just such a different landscape. Like there was, like we had social media, but it wasn't like it is now. Like people didn't like live their lives and like get all of their information and everything through social media. So it's cool because in many ways, women are a lot more informed, but it's also like really overwhelming and overstimulating. And like all of this blue light is kind of damaging to circadian health, which is damaging to mitochondria. So there's like a lot of pros and cons of like technology doing good things and technology being not quite ideal, where the quantum technology, if it could harmonize with our biology better, could be really awesome if we had more than just like filter blue light out, right? Like we just turn it and it's like bright red. Like it's not fully as like the circadian life isn't as aesthetic as it could be. I really look forward to it being a lot more dynamic and living and for it to feel more biological, because we're starting to mimic like biology and nature, but it's still not fully quite there.
But it's also interesting. Like we are literally living at such a fascinating time.
Yeah.
Right. The convergence of the science that is being either discovered or rediscovered or unsuppressed, the technology that's evolving, the consciousness that's evolving, the cosmic cycles that we're in across, I mean, pick an approach from the yugas all the way to Western astrology to technology cycles, historic cycles, economic cycles. Like we are at a change point in all of them. And so anyway, all that to say is like, there's so many tangents to go.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's right. It was about the seasons. Yeah. Seasonal methylation patterns.
Right.
The seasons, okay. Yeah. So like you can see like, here I am, I'm out in fall. Like I've been awake for this many hours and the sun's only this far in the sky, right? Like we have sensors that say like, is the light coming from the top or is it coming from down low? And right. And like my body is always like sensing it. The color spectrum, like there are color healers, right? Who would be like, oh, you're missing this color frequency. You'd do well to decorate with this color and things like, how could that work? And like, well, your body uses that to understand like, you know, how much longer do we have until all these apples are like not there anymore, right? Like I can go and grab an apple from the tree right now, but I know that soon that's not going to be the case. So this is supposed to regulate fertility, right? Like I'm working in women's health space. So a lot of fertility is very wonky right now because there's no seasonal information coming. And we know there are seasonal elements there. And then likewise with the lactational amenorrhea, that was what I was going to talk about with regard to prolactin being a seasonal hormone, that in the animal kingdom, it's saying, is it time to hibernate or not? And so we see really crazy prolactin levels in obesity. And we also see that a lot of women, like they're not getting their cycles back, right? I've been doing a lot of consultations lately for women who have secondary infertility, where like they had one baby and then they waited a few years and then now they can't get pregnant. They're like, I'm not infertile. Like me and my husband, like we've had a baby together, but now why is it not working? And so we can look at these like the seasonality of the hormones, that the lights that we're under just give this drive. And then especially importing foods from the tropics all the time, just like make the body think that it's always a different season than it is, which changes the methylation and just changes all kinds of
Right.
things.
Which is different from actually living in the tropics, in which case that would be fine because you're just all the signals are natural and from the organic environment. Whereas if you live a tropical lifestyle and you're in Buffalo, New York,
Yeah.
that's messing up your body.
To get to the quantum scale, like when we are under different kinds of lights, we have proteins that will do different kinds of things. So that was one of the ones that I shared recently too, that people were like, wow, this is so cool. So we have different protons that the light comes in. And so if we absorb UVB light, the proteins will grab it. And then afterwards, they'll start fluorescing and re-releasing that light as UVA inside of our body. Like we have like UV light in the body, and we need to be getting that. But people, like if we're just under indoors, then we don't get any of the UV spectrum. And so then the proteins don't fluoresce. And so then we don't have that light released, right? Then so like the whole system is changed. And that's where technology is still like the idea that UV light is always to be feared is really driving a lot of like thyroid problems and hormonal problems and things, because a lot of those really light sensitive proteins, amino acids, are the ones that need to get converted into the hormones. So we have like hormones from fats, like vitamin D is cholesterol that has to get lit up by UV light. But we also have proteins that need to get lit up by UV light to be able to flow and do the things they need to. So that's where it's like, is that circadian or is that quantum? It all kind of like blends together. And that's where like nature is a really nice framework to think like natural signals. One of the papers that I read about DNA recently was like, DNA is the perfect quantum supercomputer. It's already been created.
Yeah.
And so now they're just like trying to whatever those guys want to re-engineer DNA. But we're like, oh, we already have a perfect operating system for the planet that we live on. Whoa, cool.
It's so cool. I mean, it's really mind-bendingly cool and mind-blowingly cool if we've, as most of us have, been raised in, a paradigm that is so mechanistic to understand just all of the different layers and levels that are happening in the cosmos of which we are a part.
Mm-hmm.
And so this brings me to a point that we've talked about, which is that you were talking about how quantum biology can be used to create new technology, but it can also be used to explain our biology and help us understand it at a much deeper level.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to if we understand it at that deep level, we are able to create recommendations and protocols for clients or patients. Well, I'm not because I don't work with them, but those of you who do can use that information to create that. So the protocols are sort of being informed by the principles of quantum biology, which is in essence just biology itself.
Mm-hmm.
However, most protocols in the way that the system is set up come from studies or experiments that often create conditions that are different from whatever your client is actually living. And so could you just like talk about a little bit of the disconnect between the research that's leading practitioners to tell their patients what to do and how that type of research can be problematic? Because I think you used the example of people working in mental health who were given protocols from a research study, right? And they went to apply them and it was like not working. And then
we have known differences between an experimental protocol and how effective it's going to be in the clinical trials versus what happens when we're out there in the real world. So up to a point, innovation would have been coming from practitioners who are working in the field with real patients. And then at some point, like the academic institutions started having a lot of different tools and scientific like ideologies developed to say like, what's the best way to prove this or that? So when we have things that are very, very controlled, that doesn't always translate into the real world. Where things are very, very messy and chaotic. And so what's happening is it started in the 70s and it's just had a steady progression, building and more networks of actual practitioners are reclaiming their power in designing studies inside of their practices and disseminating that information to each other. And a lot of times it's being done with an academic partner. And in some cases it's being done, they're just like doing it themselves. And so we're starting to see like all research used to be like bottom up from like practices, and then they would share it with each other. And then there was an era where it was all coming down, where it was like the institutions design the protocols and then practitioners are just agents of the institution. So then it was all top down. And now what we're starting to see is emerging where the power, because we can do cool things with the top-down institutional research.
Right. Like chop up mitochondrial DNA and look at it under a microscope.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's neat. It's neat. And it gives it like, we could look at that person and be like, oh, they have a really shoddy outlook on life and aren't making very good decisions. I think that I'm worried they might get cancer. But they're like, let's chop up their DNA and then we can like give them a test that's a little bit more objective, right? And maybe less prone to bias. I don't know. Like, we'll find out. And that's where I like this like meet in the middle approach to say like practitioners are working with people, and practitioners have the ability to innovate. They have gut sense. They have test tools, right? That's another thing, is that testing is becoming a lot more available. And so it's becoming that there's more of this merge and need for this scientist/practitioner. And it's also important because then, especially for any kind of practitioner who is doing something that's somewhat experimental, to be able to report on their results. And if it's working really well, then they should be telling their people. And if it's not working well, then they should be correcting course. So implementation is one of the places that we know from academia and the work that's already been done that circadian interventions are very effective, very, very safe. But we have a lot less knowledge about how do patients actually adhere to the protocols, right? We could be doing some really good information to say, like, does it make a difference what order we add the interventions? For example, in mental health, when dealing with bipolar manic episodes, when they use enforced darkness protocols, which could be either with real darkness or with heavy blue blocking glasses, when they do that, the patients release sooner. And they use a 14-hour enforced darkness protocol. But what they've also learned is that that would be like ideal for them to keep going, but the patients always rebel and they don't want to have 14 hours of darkness. They want a more normal life. So then they do the clinical 14 hours of darkness, but then they drop it back slowly and try to get them to stay at a baseline of about 10 hours of darkness. So from circadian health, we know that at 10 hours of darkness, that gives you that 2 hours before bedtime in a relatively dark environment so that your melatonin is flowing, and then you have a full 8-hour melatonin, right? And that's really good for your everything to regenerate. So if you would have just looked at the initial research, it would have been like, oh, when you have like someone who's in the middle of a manic episode, like 14 hours of darkness. But then they learned like, oh, but if you try to make them do 14 hours of darkness, they're going to rebel and then they're going to throw off the whole protocol. So you actually need to only give them 10 hours of darkness over time, even though it's not necessarily as effective, they will stick with it for longer. So those kinds of like implementation level pieces are what we are really missing in terms of circadian health and quantum health. Like we're really clear on what's good and what's safe, but we're just less clear on how does it translate into the real world. And then there's also things like, is it cost effective? Like for a doctor, maybe they don't have time in their practice to give the circadian protocols, but maybe it would be cost effective for them to hire a health coach to work with their patients. Like, are they then going to see better performance with that health coach that then boosts the whole practice for that to actually be a very sustainable approach?
Right. Yes. Because that implementation piece, and maybe why we're so prescription focused over lifestyle focused at the doctor, is because, as we discussed earlier, making change requires energy and often support. And so the implementation piece, if you just hand people a list of 10 things to change in their life and they like, bye.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to get the outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're not going to be able to do the research that we're talking about here, which is having research come up from the field.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you seeing? What's happening?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, all of the smartest people I know in real life and that I follow make big decisions based on what they're seeing. Like, they are based on what they're observing in the real world. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know people who have made huge financial decisions, like from talking to the taxi driver every time they travel to get a sense of what's going on in that country, right? It happens in medicine, but also in economics and policy, all of the things. It's like everything gets funneled up by experts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, who's on the ground watching what's happening, right?
Right.
Like, who is in touch with that bipolar patient?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I know it's annoying, but can you just like read a book with a red light instead of watching TV? Right? Like,
Yeah.
who's in there with them?
Mm-hmm.
And then who's tracking those results in the field? And so what I think is exciting is that there are ways for practitioners to do that.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying is there are standards and protocols and blueprints for practitioners of any size with any number of clients to learn how to track what's going on with their clients or patients in a way that they could contribute to the larger research field.
Yeah. So like using a chronotype questionnaire at intake, we're already doing intake questions as practitioners. We're like, that you have a patient, you have to do an evaluation to figure out where are they at. So at the same time as you're doing whatever, like if you're a mental health and you're running a mental health panel, and if you're doing a general health diagnostic, like throw in the chronotype questionnaire, because that will give you information about your client's baseline, where they are. And then over time, like at their next visit, if you do another chronotype questionnaire after they have done this, then you could see, did their chronotype shift? And then you could also see, did any of their other health parameters shift? And then you have an association, and you have your client being their own baseline because you did that intake questionnaire there. So then you're just adding a slight level of rigor to what you're already doing, but then you have a particular data point to be able to work with that person and see, like, did they respond really fast to the protocol? And then to know, like, which ones did they do? Right? Were they working with their morning light? Did they like anchor their meal times? Like, what were the things that made the biggest difference for them? We could get to start finding out that kind of information. And then really important, especially for those who do care about like the general state of people outside of their practice, that when you're having really good results, if that then goes out into the bigger world, then other people can see that and know that the approach is valid at the ground level, that it could apply to their practice.
Right. So what we're talking about here is called practice-based research.
Yeah.
And it empowers practitioners to track their outcomes for the benefit of their clients, for the benefit of their colleagues in the wider community, to share what's working, and for the benefit of our understanding as a whole. And that if they follow certain guidelines, which are not super complicated, they can publish case studies, they can have their research contribute towards publication or publish themselves potentially.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And I really want to thank you for bringing this idea out, because as you've just been explaining, like, this really is the next step for this movement of applied quantum biology with the goal of just enhancing life. And that's it.
Yeah, it is. And it fits right in with there's another realm of people working in academia of this, where they call it translational medicine, where we're trying to go from like bench, like the academic research, to bedside, like what's happening in the real world. So this practice-based research fits exactly at the endpoint of, does it actually work in the real world? And then what are the hurdles with implementation there? So it fits with that last piece of the translational research medicine, like flywheel there. So it is a really important collaboration point. So for us, like, it's really important for us to be doing this work as ground level practitioners, but then it's also really important for the potential collaboration and feedback loop where academia can be informed of what's happening here, and like this cycle can go and eventually include the larger institutions. Like, we're kind of a grassroots here, and that's like one of the things that's most exciting is, oh, I could be doing better with my patients. Oh, I could have like early warning when one of my patients isn't tracking as well as they should be. Because most of the time it's like you start doing this and it's just so smooth with clients. And then every once in a while you run into a case where you're like, that's strange. This could give like early warning for those anomalies where something about the protocol isn't working, or maybe they're not adhering to it the way that they say they are, right? There's all kinds of nuanced information that can come out just to improve your day-to-day practice.
Right. By implementing these
Yeah,
practice-based research protocols.
exactly. Yeah. So back and
Yes.
forth, the big picture, the little picture, the big picture, the little picture. That's what like quantum
Always.
health is so for that.
Always. Up and down. Yes.
Yeah.
All the things.
Hmm.
And what I am really excited about is that we are going to be launching a practice-based research network. And Nico will be leading a series of workshops to teach practitioners how to do this. So if you are one, stay tuned. We'll be announcing that shortly. But this is the next stage towards empowering you, the person, whether
Yeah.
you're the client or the practitioner,
Yeah.
to fully engage in the paradigm shift
Hmm.
by taking what you're already doing and having it be an enhanced contribution.
Yeah. So anyone that is a practitioner, we're looking for any of our practitioners who have case studies or like even like you don't have to have a high volume. We can do case studies or we have practice like protocols for 10 or fewer members that are still very scientifically rigorous. The field of practice-based research is full of ideas and examples that we in quantum health can use. So that's really exciting. I also want to hear from patients who are interested in this to have patient feedback as we're developing this, and then also any academic partners who would be interested in looping in to help with mentorship or data crunching or just to be like involved and aware of what's going on. So we kind of have like multiple levels of the citizen scientists, the patients, the academics, and then of course our practitioners. So my email is nico@iaqb.foundation. And if you're interested in this, I would love to hear from you just to as we're building out our stakeholder list for who wants to be in the know and to potentially contribute.
Yeah, this is going to be really fun. And just to clarify, if you work in any kind of quote quantum capacity, whether you are certified through the institute or not, it doesn't matter. If you do that kind of work as a practitioner, this is open to you. And we are looking to build out a coalition of practitioners who are contributing to the advancement of a paradigm shift towards a quantum biologic medical model, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Going all the way through inside of the QBC Pro community. Speaking to which, I wanted to do a little promotion there. I'm kicking off a quantum research rounds where we're just going through the research that is there, the academic stuff. And I'm going through all of the systems of the body across the next. We're doing one a month. So we're going to be going through like the skeletal muscular system. We're going to be going through the nervous system. We're going to be going through the digestive system, right? Like we're just going to go like step by step through the whole body, looking at what are the things that we know happening that have quantum mechanisms that we know are needed to fully understand to the best of current abilities what's happening in those systems. So that is really going to be a lot of fun, just picking through the research. And then you'll have like in hand, like some different studies to be able to look at and think about and concepts just to ground this a little bit more in like the human body, because it can be kind of ethereal or just mental.
Yeah.
But it also is happening in academia. So to see like what's the foundation of academic research that we're building all of this kooky light stuff on top of, to help make those connections.
These research rounds are going to be super, super fun. That is inside the QBC Pro community. If you go to qbcpod.com and click on community, it'll bring you to the page to join. It's a low membership fee. We also provide a ton of business support inside the QBC Pro community. We have a quantum business consultant who comes in every month to answer questions. And we have a ton of recordings on how to build a thriving practice and all that kind of thing. And then Nico is bringing in the research piece into the QBC Pro community. So again, the community is open to anyone interested and looking towards working within the field of what could be considered applied quantum biology. And if you are interested in supporting our nonprofit foundation, which is now opening up the practice-based research network, please do email Nico, as she mentioned, Nico at iaqb.foundation.
For those listening, it's Nikko.
Thank you. Yes. Not no C, Nikko at iaqb.foundation. And because really we live in a quantum universe and we can do whatever we want.
Yep.
And what we want to do is get together and like do a cool research thing. So come join us. We'd love to have you, and we'll all shift the paradigm together. Nico, this was delightful. I always love chatting with you. I never know what direction it's going to go in. And yeah, really fun.
Yeah, thank you so much, Meredith. I appreciate having you and collaborating on all of this. It's super, super exciting.
All right. We'll have you back on again soon. And stay lit up, everybody. We need you. Okay, bye.
This has been the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. To find a practitioner who practices from this point of view, visit our directory at quantumbiologycollective.org. If you are a practitioner, definitely take a look at the Applied Quantum Biology Certification, a 6-week study of the science of the new human health paradigm and its practical application with your patients and clients. We also love to feature graduates of the program on this very podcast. Until next time, the QBC.